Thank you so much for joining today. I see that others are joining us as we're starting up, and let's give them just a couple minutes more to join. I'll just say a couple of preparatory remarks. I'm going to be um, uh, using a part of a video today for our meditation time. It comes from this last Sunday. John Eric Steinbaumer, a remarkable emerging teacher, one of many or several, at Appamada in Austin, who have been practicing and gaining skills and sharing um, in the work of supporting our Sangha for many years. John Eric gave a wonderful talk last Sunday in which he talked about the Ocean Mudra Samadhi fascicle from the Shobogenzo, from Dogen's Shobogenzo. And it's a very beautiful passage full of poetic expressions and contradictions and enough to puzzle over for a lifetime and to enjoy for a lifetime. And as part of that presentation, he led a guided meditation, which I'm going to share the video of, or actually Marla, our kind monitor today, will be queuing up to share on that. Before we get going on that part, let's just spend a couple of minutes sitting together, breathing deeply, and acknowledging the ocean of suffering around us, as well as the ocean of resources that we may not feel right now, but also the consciousness, the ocean of consciousness that is expressing itself through all of us. So please just take a moment. You may have people near you. You may know of people far from you who are in great suffering right now. Hold them in your thoughts. So I mentioned before, if you came in, you may not have heard, but I'm going to ask Marla in just a minute to queue up some video from a talk that John Eric Steinbaumer gave last Sunday at Appamada. I was there. I'm back in Albuquerque now, but I was actually in Austin over the weekend. And I got to be timekeeper, and you may see me sitting in the timekeeper seat while John Eric is talking. I think it's really remarkable that video is already posted, and that's just an example of the way that so many people help with Appamada and help share the Dharma in a really meaningful way, giving their time and energy, for which I am grateful. Michael, I know that you were there last Sunday, so you're going to relive some of what John Eric did. And okay, well, Marla, would you cue up the video to share?
This is like a energetic string kind of pulling you from the top of your crown of your head, pulling you up just a little bit more. Let your eyes close or let them rest a few feet in front of you. Invite some softness with your gaze. And then I'd like to invite you to visualize seeing roots growing beneath you, beneath your seat, about 3 feet down into the ground, into the earth. Just feel that energetic root grounding down. And then at the same time, from the crown of your head, imagine branches growing above you, about 3 feet above you. And then from this place, I would just invite you to notice, without trying to change anything, where does your awareness feel located in this moment in your body? Where is your seat of attention? Does it feel like it's behind your eyes, inside your forehead? Just noticing right now. Then I invite you to see, just as a practice, see if your awareness, if your attention can soften. Can you soften the edges of where you see yourself? Can you let your attention widen just a little bit? And with that awareness of your attention, at the same time, can you feel the weight of your body in a chair or in a cushion? Can you feel the contact points of your feet? And then I invite you to see if you can gently allow your attention to soften and melt down your head into the throat, into the chest. Just notice what that feels like. Maybe you can allow it to continue with time to melt down to the hara, the lower abdomen. Just see, can you let your awareness dwell there, these places in your body? Not as an imagination that that's what's happening, but as a true perception. Just let it settle there for a minute. Stay with it. And from that place, I invite you to notice your breath. Again, not changing anything, just with awareness. Can you see that in-breath and that out-breath like waves rising and falling? And then notice what happens, if anything, when you hear me say, I am always in the ocean. I am always in the ocean. You are the ocean breathing. Past moments behind you, waves that have already crested and fallen. Future moments before you, waves forming. All past moments, all future moments within you, appearing in this moment. No edge and no boundary. And as Dogen said, when one wave moves, thousands of waves follow. When thousands of waves move, one wave follows. And he also said, although the ocean surface is invisible, there's no doubt about the practice of swimming in it. Although the ocean's surface is invisible, there's no doubt about the practice of swimming in it. With this body, you awaken all beings. With this body, you awaken. And in this sitting in Zazen, this appearance of this body in this moment is Ocean Mudra Samadhi. This is Ocean Mudra Samadhi.
Thanks for playing that. Why would I want to play that? It has to do with compassion, really. The reminder that we are not just in the ocean, but part of the ocean is also a reminder. Well, I've been reading Thich Nhat Hanh's book, The Other Shore, and he makes a point of saying that each moment of consciousness that we have is an expression of the consciousness that is the whole universe. That by swimming in the ocean, by acknowledging that we are part of the ocean, we can draw on the resources, at least the sense that I think for me is inherent in me, that I am connected with things beyond myself, and that can be a source of strength and compassion for meeting this suffering in this world. In this discussion, Dogen is talking about ways in which the Buddha expressed non-self, and how the elements arise and how the elements come together. That the term elements as used in this translation is one that's used by Thich Nhat Hanh also. It's a substitution for what was usually translated or shows up in English as dharmas. But the ways in which expressions of reality show up in interaction. And there's a beautiful quote that John Eric gave as part of his talk that I'll close with here. This body is a coming together of elements. This body is not merely a coming together, it is elements coming together. A body formed in this way is described as this body. That the uniqueness of our situation, of our personhood, is not an solid, differentiated self. It is coextensive with the universe, but it is a unique expression in this moment as we interact with the universe. And these moments come into being one after another as we interact with an inexpressibly large number of other elements that have other forms. So again, why does that matter? Well, we're not alone. To me, that's the answer that appears. One, we're not alone. Two, it is somehow to acknowledge that is a seeing of our true natures. And that makes a difference. Makes it, or at least for me, it makes a difference to think I'm doing my best to understand what my true nature is. And then from that, there's a call to hold the people around us, the people far away, the planet we live on, the universe we live in, to hold them in compassion and kinship. Thank you for your indulgence in this exercise. And I hope if you have reflections, that you would be willing to come forward and share, because as in the exercise that John Eric led in the recording, experiencing and sharing are much more important than just hearing. Bridget, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for this offering. Well, I guess the idea of listening and sharing, and I've been really struggling with the fact that we've had a mass shooting here in town, and it just brings up a lot of how hard it is for me to stay centered when my fears and anxieties are heightened like this. And so I found the thoughts expressed in John Eric's talk of trying to get back here into the here and now, because obviously I'm not under any personal threat, but it's just between that and the situation with the war, because both my parents suffered from PTSD from serving in World War II. I always have this feeling that people are being, you just don't go back from having been in, the people who are actually serving in that theater and having to do these things. And so I'm just interested in any perspective that you can gain on, that you can offer about how to bring things back into focus.
To me, one of the most striking parts of John Eric's um, guided meditation was the imaginative step of feeling ourselves rooted into the ground, several feet into the ground, a measurable kind of human scale connection, and branching into the air in the way that trees branch and take sustenance from the air, take sustenance from the earth. How does that relate to the feeling of sadness? I was in Austin Saturday night when the shooting that you mentioned occurred. Random, except not random, maybe religiously motivated in vengeance for the attack on Iran. Maybe so. But chosen, but certainly the victims were kind of chosen at random. They were people sitting on the balcony of a bar on 6th Street in Austin. How possibly to meet that? It's certainly impossible to do it just from a narrowed, tightly held sense of self. How to choose how to respond. Do we respond by trying to find ways to aid the victims? Do we respond by trying to make it so these things don't happen literally every day in the United States? That's a very daunting challenge to take on. It's a it might seem impossible, but at least we can know that we are connected to each other and that we can draw on each other and that we have the responsibility to do what we can to end suffering for ourselves and for others. And it is so paradoxical that we sit still and imagine things like having roots, imagine things like having branches, imagine things like being part of the ocean. And those imaginative steps shape our body, and our brains are plastic. They shape what happens now and potentially in the future within our minds. And somehow that feels like that makes a difference to me. And I mean, the teachings of all the teachers I've been reading is go ahead and do this sitting because it will help. It will provide a mode of helping.
Okay. Thanks.
For you to directly address your question, I would say feel the anxiety that arises as deeply as it has to be felt. And then feel that as connected with the people who were wounded, the people who died, the people who fled in terror, the people who are fleeing in terror from bombs falling in the Middle East. Know that is something that we share. And offer your experience to connect with others.
Thank you.
I had my first in-person practice discussion with Nate Smalley, the new senior teacher at Apamata in Austin yesterday morning. My last chance to be in the Zendo at this time. And I was describing to him something that had arisen in sitting earlier that morning, which was realizing how tightly clenched I am, how hard-hearted I am in regard to some people that are actually quite close to me, some relatives who, because of past experiences I've had with them, I feel that I have to protect myself against. He said, what part of you are you, and Nate asked some very skillful questions. What part of you are you protecting? How does closing your heart off protect you, or closing your heart off in such a way that you're unwilling to take action to reach out to these other folks? How does that help? Can you see it actually helping? And is there a way to address the part of you that needs protection from your core, from the part of you that has the capacity to make a vow and connect with others? How can that happen? And finally, the question that most stuck with me is, okay, given the situation, what does you've explored then parts, but what does wisdom advise in this situation? And that's an inquiry I've been carrying with me ever since. Given where we are in this world, given the connections that we have, and in some cases the burdens that we carry, what can wisdom offer us? The wisdom that is somehow connected with knowing that we are the ocean, not just swimming on top of it, but actually an expression of the ocean in literal physical form and in biological recapitulation in our breathing from the way that oxygen gets distributed onto the reefs and the shores of the places where life may have arisen on this planet. On the one hand, that's a very grand kind of decentering vision for me. But again, it seems to offer more by way of capacity for meeting the people around me. And particularly for starting with the parts of myself that need care, for starting with the parts of myself that feel like they have to protect me from being injured, starting with the parts of myself that don't know what to do. And then seeing what possibilities arise. Welcome. And I'm sorry, I know I will say your name wrong.
Yeah, it's Kathy. I'm sorry.
Hi,
Whoops.
Kathy.
It's Kathy. I'm sorry. I have two Zoom networks going, and this one popped up this time. So
Right. I do that a lot.
yeah. Someone, I don't know if it was you or John Eric, said something about consciousness, and it reminded me of a typical statement that was in a poem I read the other day. And the statement was that if you're stuck in traffic, you are traffic. And then it occurred to me that similarly, if you are conscious, you are consciousness.
Mhm.
And when I think of it that way, I feel this great expansive sense of self, or not self really, this great expansion. And so I just thought I'd share that.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
I'm reminded of something from Thich Nhat Hanh, uh, uh, who is quoting from the I think the Bahia Sutra, but there's several. He makes reference to several places where the Buddha gives teachings about what consciousness is, and how there is no abiding self. I mean, first of all, this is the teaching
Correct.
on the no abiding self, the Bahia Sutra, the Chanda Sutra, and actually, in just a minute, I'm going to locate a section that I'm going to share from the other shore that addresses this. But as the Buddha said to Bahia, when hearing arises, let it be just hearing. Don't bring in self. And I think that what you just said points to that as well. He was talking about the five senses, or the many senses that we have, including uh, what arises within our minds as mental formations, but that the consciousness is always there, and that it arises, and that what we have is an expression of that. So when consciousness comes into awareness, that is consciousness itself, and that the Dogen. I left out a lot of what John Eric had to say very beautifully on Sunday, but John Eric addresses this directly, and in quoting Dogen and reflecting on it, that this is that the awareness that arises is like a wave in the ocean, one of the great metaphors that gets used many times in Buddhism and in Zen, that it is the ocean that's arising and falling,
Right. Right.
and the motion. There's this weird thing with waves. If you look at diagrams of waves as they're going, the ocean is not moving up and down. It's just transmitting motion, and other things move, and it's a powerful metaphor just to see what a wave is that is acting through time and space, and that just as you said, this is an expression of consciousness itself.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Thich Nhat Hanh in The Other Shore, in one of the chapters, talks about the ways in which the Buddhist teachings on our sensory apparatus, and the ways in which we meet the world through our sensory apparatus, and the ways in which early Buddhist teachings, there are 18 realms of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, etc., mind, consciousness, etc., meeting those parts of the world that can be seen, can be heard, can be met with mind consciousness, and expressing the manifestations of those things behind what can be met. I'm sorry, I'm making a hash of this, but I want to just pick up in the middle here. The 18 realms, Thich Nhat Hanh writes, are wonderful manifestations. And he quotes from a version of the Heart Sutra, saying they don't say dharmas, they say elements. And he continues, rather than saying there are no realms of elements from eyes to mind consciousness, the translation says the six senses, six sense organs, and six sense consciousnesses are not separate self entities. We tend to see the six sense organs as separate from each other, But this is an erroneous perception, a construction of our minds. Two hands clapping give rise to sound, just as eyes in contact with form give rise to sight. Not one of these realms can exist by itself. Each can only interbe with every other realm. In the 18 realms, there is nothing that is permanent. Eyes are impermanent and always in the process of change. Form is impermanent, always vibrating with the energy of heat and interacting with the environment, even if we cannot perceive it directly. We also know that in the process of seeing and sensing, our brain is constantly rewiring itself, establishing new neural connections and reinforcing or weakening old ones. Nothing is fixed, nothing is static, everything is of an organic nature. The eyes do not see. We normally say the eyes see, the nose smells, the ears hear. The Buddha says that. It is natural to say that because that's our usual way of thinking. That's the way our language works. There must be a doer, an actor, in order for action to be possible. So we say the eyes see. To see is the action, and the eyes are the actor, the subject of seeing. There is a subject and a verb in these statements. That is the way we're accustomed to thinking. But we easily understand that it's not the eyes that see. When eyes and forms are in contact, there is sight. Eyes are just one of the conditions that make sight possible. Many other conditions are also necessary, like light, form, space, time, optic nerve, brain, and so on. It's not correct to just say eyes, to just make eyes the subject of the verb to see. Sight arises contemporaneously with eyes and form. As with the eyes, the other sense organs, in collaboration with their sense objects and the right conditions, bring about hearing and thinking. So here's where we are connecting with consciousness as well. So there is thinking as a result of mind, an object of mind, but there is no thinker. There is feeling, but the feeling and the one who feels are not really separate. No self is the absence of an unchanging, enduring self who stands outside the action. It is the number of phenomena coming together that make sight, hearing, knowing, and touching possible. Our mental formations like anxiety, anger, fear, sadness, and despair are closely related to nerve impulses and neurotransmitters. We see how our body is the continuation of our mind, and our mind is the continuation of our body. Going further, neuroscientists now are recognizing that our brain is a social brain. Without the environment, without interaction, between mother and baby, without other people, our brain will not become a human brain. Without play and social interaction, our brain and our sense consciousness do not develop properly. Our capacity to see, our eye consciousness, only develops through interaction only develops through interaction with the environment and the process of exploration. And what he's saying about the sense apparatus extends to consciousness, and it is important to remember that. Just as in the metaphors that John Eric was using and that drawing on Dogen, we are the ocean. We're not just in the ocean, we're not just swimming on top. We actually are the ocean expressing itself through these interactions. And that makes a difference. I mean, how it makes a difference is something that is hard to express in words, but is something that we can live into. Denise, welcome.
Thank you, Joel. What a journey you are inviting us into. While you were talking, what is the ocean? And the first time you mentioned the ocean, of course, I had the image of an ocean, wet, swimming on top, and feeling the movement. And the more I listen to you, the more I see waves, or I imagine waves. While
Mm-hmm.
you talk, you are producing waves into the
Mm-hmm.
space.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody looks at us kindly, we get the kind wave from
Mm-hmm.
somebody. So it's as if I don't know. It's because some of the things you say, if I try to understand it with my brain and understanding, I'm lost, or I'm imprisoned in making an image of something that is not imaginable. And then suddenly, while you were talking, I had this notion of waves, even coming through the screen from where Albuquerque, where you are, to
Mm-hmm.
Bern.
Light is bouncing off me here in Albuquerque, going into a camera, getting changed into electrical impulses, getting set thousands of miles away through time and space, and then showing up into a machine that can translate it into a visual image for you. And the challenge for us is also to remember what the Buddha said. As we are looking at each other, to not make the mistake of thinking there's a permanent self
Yeah.
watching or being watched, speaking or being heard. That's a tough one for me. I mean, as Buddha said to Bahia, in hearing, only hearing. Don't bring a self into it. It's like, but wait, I've already used part of my mental apparatus to make some words so it can represent it to myself that can hear. You know, the hearing itself is there, and there is truth in being able to do that. But there's also work to be done to simply appreciate that. So, what was the famous expression from um, the English writer whose name has jumped out of my head just a moment ago? But it takes a lifetime of work to see what's directly under our noses,
Mhm.
and that there's a beauty in that, and a difficulty in this realization of how close, how intimate we are with the entire universe, and yet how, because of the way our brains work and our bodies work, we generate separation moment after moment after moment. And that separation seems so convincing. I mean, I could pick my pencil up and stab it into my hand, and I would feel very, very separate from the entire universe at that moment, because I would have, a particular thing um, that would really focus my attention, called pain. I don't know. I'm going off sideways. I'm sorry about that. Um,
No, I'm coming along with what you say. Um, I got a bit intrigued with this, with the word wave, because
mm,
if we are waves, then we are not fixed
mhm.
in a way.
Explore that more, please.
And if I'm touched by the waves of your words, then it changes my waves.
Mm,
Um, I just feel like this this yeah, in a way it brings me it opened something in me, this what you said in the beginning, that we connect with the people that we know who suffer, or near or far, and it's like the wave allows to open. And I'm sorry, I can't. It's more like a dance, it's more like a movement than I cannot so much explain it in words. But anyway, I want to say thank you very much. It's
Well, thank
something.
you. And thank you, Denise. And thank you for your gestures, which express the movement that you're feeling. It means a lot. Marla, welcome. I see you have your hand raised. I hope that means you want to talk.
I have been sitting here struggling with this concept of collective consciousness and where it comes from. And something you said that I think was a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh was, "There are feelings, but no feeler. There are thoughts, but no thinker." And I live in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities. And so this collective consciousness is something that a lot of you are probably tired of hearing about. But where does that come from is the question. And it's a beautiful thing to see it. It's collective courage and love and determination and hard work. And being a part of that as both a participant and an observer is, and I'm making this flowing wave-like, that's what it feels like. There are moments of desperation and exhaustion, but these people here, and I wasn't born and raised here for sure, they're different. There are sociological and cultural reasons, I believe, why this resistance movement has worked in Minnesota. But this has been very enlightening to me to think about, no thinker, no feeler. It's happening organically and very, I think, remarkably, a demonstration of we're all in the ocean. We are the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all.
There are a lot of compassionate people operating where you are, including yourself, of course. And that compassion is turning to action in support of those who need help. And I am moved by that example and moved toward action where I am.
Yes.
By that example.
Yeah. Everybody.
So that's how waves work. Something gets bumped, it bumps other things, and the energy propagates until it stops because of some other reason. But it can continue, and it can be amplified by other similar actions as well.
It's the exportation of love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more quote from Thich Nhat Hanh at the end of this chapter, which is called "The Stars Are Conscious." Many scientists still think that our consciousness is subjective, that it arises up from inside us and goes out to be in touch with the objective world. Thich Nhat Hanh says, this is a dualistic way of looking. Whenever we look up at the sky and see the moon, the stars, and the galaxies, we have to practice this to see that these things are not independent of consciousness. Everything in the everything in the cosmos has consciousness in it. Without consciousness, how can we see and know that the sun, the moon, and the stars exist? I will interject. We are just chemical elements that got spewed out by stars some immeasurable time ago that came together in such a way that we can feel consciousness within us. So we are no different from the stars we arose from, except that we cannot measure what we can perceive. There are things that we can perceive within ourselves that we find it difficult to measure at this time in other realms, such as the moon, the stars. The stars, to continue, the stars and moon are consciousness. Consciousness is the stars and moon. Looking at the moon and stars, we are seeing our own mind. Looking at the perceived, we see the perceiver, our six sense consciousnesses, and the six sense objects are not separate self entities. They do not exist by themselves. Our sense consciousness and the object of our consciousness always arise at the same time. As the branch of philosophy called phenomenology says, consciousness is always consciousness of something. And I will add, that's one of the strong arguments that the Buddha used over and over again. We don't exist except as heaps of contacts with the world around us. Consciousness is always consciousness of something. When we see this, we begin to see the unity of all phenomena, of the 18 realms of subject and object, I and form, thinker and thought, stars and consciousness. And I will add ocean and swimmer. Trudy, thank you. I'm so delighted to see you raise your hand.
Hi, Joel. Thank you for this intriguing exploration of the kind of this really fundamental thing that I think we grapple with from our kind of separate places. And I, I wonder if you would indulge me, and because the way I process some of these things is in writing, and so I wrote something a while ago called "We're Always Water," and I wonder if it would be okay to read it.
I would be delighted to hear it.
Okay. So this was me trying to, what is this? Separate, not separate. As the water flows along, it may not know itself as water, but only as a great conjoined flow, no separation. Rocks, fish, swirling branches, all of life rushing together. Imagine then a droplet's surprise to find itself alone, feeling, finally, its own watery nature, as it is birthed unasked into separateness, yet always river, flung skyward over the brutal edge of the waterfall. Now falling downwards, it might forget its essential nature, twisting in the turbulent air, now finding itself part of a transient rainbow, now feeling its fellow divided droplets rushing by, different speeds and trajectories caught by the vagaries of the wind. It may start to compare itself, faster, slower, bigger, smaller, seeing itself as other, treasuring its separateness, or mourning a deep, inexplicable ache as it forgets its beginnings. Imagine then the unanticipated relief as it finally merges a lifetime later into the tumbling, rushing life of the river, remembering its essential wholeness as the river gathers itself back together to flow onwards, offering itself to itself as an expression of love. We're always water.
Trudy, who knew that a water droplet could feel so many expressions of human separateness? Thank you for those beautiful images.
Yeah.
I remember you talking about Suzuki Roshi seeing a waterfall. I believe it was you, but seeing a waterfall at Yosemite or somewhere in California, and talking about the way the droplets separated and then came back together in the river.
I think that's
And,
probably what prompted that for me, that and that sense of how we experience ourselves as separate, and yet we're always the same thing. We're
and
all made of
in
stars.
your experience, I mean, you're speaking of it very movingly now, but is it not true for many of us, speaking first for myself, that it's much easier to feel the separation than it is to feel the flow, than to
Absolutely.
feel that we need reminding? And the
Mm.
poetry can do that, music can do that.
Yeah.
Wonderful expressions like the deep exploration of language that Dogen does in Shobogenzo. That those things, by turning images around in new ways, that those can help us feel connections that are so often so sadly hidden.
So hard to feel. I personally felt just lucky enough to live long enough to have much more of a glimpse of that non-separation. I think of myself as someone with a very strong ego, and
Mm-hmm.
it's taken a lot of wearing down.
Is that right? I picture you as someone who had a sense of connection very young. So that's
Mm,
interesting that you say that.
yeah. Well, I think that's something in the memory, that sense we have, because aren't we called back by bodhicitta, called back by memory?
Called back by
And I
bodhicitta.
think a lot of children do have much less of a sense of separateness,
Mm-hmm.
but we find our way there, don't we? And then we spend a lot of time with our friends finding our way back.
Exactly. How blessed we are in our friends.
So blessed. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's close by. Oh, Sophie, I'm sorry. Please come ahead and talk, and then we
and
will
then we will
close.
close. So sorry. I felt so moved by everybody. I wanted to share a little something. Because I think we're very good at separating, but pain is something that brings us back together. And I remember, because I have a lot of my teachings from the cows, so I have a cow story. I had a cow who ate some mushrooms, and she was in a really bad state. She suffered really deeply for many days. And Denise was there. She remembered the story. So, but I would go and see her, and she would come and look in my eyes, and she was aware, I was aware, and she was looking for help, and now she knew I was there. And that's another expression of being in the same wave, I guess. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sophie.
Sophie.
Let's say the four practice principles one time together. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. I turn this back to Marla.
Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity, and your support makes a huge difference. You You can go to appamata.org and click on Contribute in the lower right-hand corner. Thank you. And for those of you who like to hang around for another half hour on the porch with some of us to reflect on what Joel has talked about today or check in, we have some regulars and we like to check in with each other. Please just stay where you are and we'll pop into gallery view. Thank you.